So,
You know what's so funny? I was going to say too, when I started following you years ago, I think you had students who were kids who were writing you letters and notes and thank you notes, and they all called you Miss Mariah. So I always want to refer to you as Miss Mariah. And then I'm like, I don't have to call you Miss Mariah. I can just call you Mariah. Yeah, I love it. I think it's so cute. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited. I think this is the most excited that my audience, my followers have been too, because they all follow you.
Thank you.
So they were sending me, ask her about this and ask her about this and ask her about this. So I'm super excited to get into that. But first, I want to hear about you, because really this is the first time we're meeting. So tell me just about you, who you are.
Well,
outside of the etiquette.
Outside of the etiquette. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so
Thank you for being
fun
here.
to be able to meet, social media friends in person. There's so many negatives to social media, but the connections that you make and the people who truly cheer you on, which I'm so grateful for, you're one of those people. So thank you for having me.
I am.
So
I'm a huge supporter.
You are. You're a good cheerleader. It helps me to be a better cheerleader too. So a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in New Jersey. I'm the oldest of 3 children, textbook oldest child.
Okay.
And I am a proud corporate America dropout, as I say.
Yay.
I followed the path that I thought I should have into the fashion industry right outside of college, and left my corporate job in 2021 to follow my dream and roll my sleeves up and do something that I really love.
So I was talking to the girls about this last night. One of the questions that I wanted to ask, which is a perfect segue, was there a pivotal moment specific to etiquette where you thought, this is it, this is what I want to do? Was it something that you saw, maybe a negative experience that you had, or was there some sort of, or a person, or what brought you from that to etiquette specifically and turning it into a business?
So if we go way back to when I was a teen, I competed in pageants, and not the ones you see on TV, the ones that are very service-based and interview-based. And it was something I inflicted on myself. This was not something my parents pushed me into. And so I was 13, understanding the importance of how to present yourself and how to speak about yourself. And it was something I was so passionate about. I've been an old soul since birth. And so I feel like, in my soul, I always had this kind of knowledge and this understanding of how to go out in the world and be the best version of yourself. But I didn't know what that meant in terms of how to speak about it, or I wasn't even considering making it a career or anything like that. And then, flash forward, I went to college, got a fashion degree, went right into corporate America. And when I moved to New York City in 2019, I was looking for things to do on the weekends because I wasn't doing what most 22-year-olds were doing on the weekends. And so as we all, looked for connection and people to relate to when you move to a new city. I lived alone in a little studio. I was looking for like-minded people. And so I signed up for an etiquette course. It was something that has always interested me. I've had several books. I've studied the history of it. I was fascinated about what the word meant and kind of how there was a certain connotation to it. And so I signed up for this etiquette course, and I kind of had a gut feeling there that I think that this is what I want to talk about and what I'm so passionate about. I just couldn't find the right word for it or the right idea of it. And I think that this is it. And so it was really just a gut feeling in that moment. And then it took me about a year to start an Instagram account just for fun, still no intention of making it a business.
Still at your corporate job?
Still at my corporate job.
Okay.
And, it was during the pandemic and we were all looking for ways to have a creative outlet, connect with people. And so I started an Instagram account just to share what I learned through the course that I took in the city. But then I was kind of, increasing my knowledge through other books and other online programs. And again, it was a creative outlet for me.
And then so after a year in, when did you decide, okay, I can make this a business? This is what you do for your business right now. You've written books and you teach children, corporate.
I don't teach children as much anymore. That's kind of how it started, though. That's kind of my origin story. Now I kind of do it all, but I do more with the business world, so corporate teachings and stuff. But I really had no intention of it becoming a business. I knew some people in the industry that taught, but I didn't know what that would look like for me. And so I received my first certification program to teach, completed the first certification program, again, because I wanted it for my own knowledge, still very much in my corporate job. And then I started my Instagram account, and I was doing like small virtual workshops on Saturday mornings or way late at night after my, working 100 hours in corporate America and, with children, some, teens, some adults. And it kind of evolved to the point where I got to a point where I said, I can't give this my all because I am working a job and I would never, not give it my all there. And so I said, I need to leave that job to see what this can become. And so I was in no position to do that. I wasn't making any money teaching etiquette yet or anything like that. But I literally woke up one Monday morning and said, I'm leaving my job.
This is it. I love that. I feel like there's also a great story in that too, because a lot of people that I bring on the podcast have a very similar story where they have this passion or this dream or something that they're so into and love to speak about, and then have this job that pays the bills, and then they just one day wake up and take this leap of faith. There's so many people that I have on the podcast that do that. I've only had women on the podcast so far. Not that I couldn't have I could have men. And they've all been women who have this passion. And then I'm always curious, like, how do you get from A to B, and what does that look like? And I think it's and I have people that write to me, they're like, I'm very inspired by that because I don't like my corporate job and I'm passionate about this, but I'm scared to do it. And I think everyone is a little bit. And then you kind of just have to jump in, because it is, for me, because I'm no longer in corporate America, which I announced last week. For a little while, I was doing corporate America and this.
Yes.
And it's very hard to do. And it's very hard to jump into this one passion when you still have this kind of clouding your brain. It's almost, I think you have to jump and then make it work versus trying to make both work, waiting for this perfect moment for this one, and then leaving this one. I don't know if there ever is this perfect moment, if that makes sense.
I agree.
To leave this one. I think you need to take the leap and then make it work.
I agree. And I think that it's important for me to be transparent about the fact that, I was living at home with my parents. I'd left the city at the time because the pandemic was bad and it was just so unknown here. And so I left. And so I was in a position financially where I could do this. And I think that's important for me to be transparent about, because I think people think, oh, my business was at a certain point and so I could leave. Like, that was not it. I was like living on the money that I had saved for my corporate job. It took me a long time to get this to be full time. I was working full time, but in terms of it being a full time income, it took me a while. And so I think that's important for me to be transparent about. I say I left my job in 2021, but I wasn't in a position with my business now where I was like, okay, this is the time. And so I agree with
I'm
you.
making loads of money. Okay, I can go do this.
It wasn't that like that at all. And so, it's important for me to talk about that. But I agree with you to the point where I had this gut feeling that I had to follow. And I had this attitude of like, I won't know unless I just do it. And if I fall on my face, I have a great college degree and I'll figure something else out, which is so odd of my type A personality to just do that. My parents were like, are you sure about this? Yeah. But I really believed in it so wholeheartedly. And I knew I had to, get scrappy and put the work in. And that's what I did.
And I do think when you're really passionate about something or talking about something, you end up making it successful because you love it and you just want to live it and breathe it every day. So
absolutely.
I think that. Okay. So jumping into the etiquette, I love etiquette, which is one of the reasons why I started following you. And it's kind of funny because I was talking to the gals today. I also feel like I'm an old soul. And that's one of the reasons why I like it, because I just love tradition. I love being polished. I love focusing on the way that I present myself to the world. But there is kind of a negative, there can be a negative connotation to it. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think maybe it's a little misunderstood where people think of etiquette as this old school cotillion, don't wear a hat indoors, regimented, stuffy sort of a thing. And one of the reasons why I like how you talk about it is, to me, it's very real world, real life, and more bringing it to maybe internalizing it more instead of, I think the way that people think about it is you're doing it for other people. You're doing it to impress other people, or you're doing it to please other people and put on a show for other people, where to me, it has everything to do with more about my own self and how I feel about myself and waking up every day. And so talk to me a little bit about that and the connotation, and then maybe how you're changing that a little bit, because I think you have a different approach to it.
Definitely. I think that some of the ideas that people have around it are a little antiquated because there was a time and a place where it was, very rule based. And, I like to look at it as a set of tools instead of rules. I think rules are a little rigid. And I think what etiquette does is gives you a roadmap or a set of tools for how you should or strive to handle different situations. But rules are so hard and fast, and not every rule applies to every situation. In our world today, we need to be flexible. And so the way that I kind of define it is having a strong level of social awareness and emotional intelligence, so much so that you can assert the best version of yourself no matter who you're with, where you are, or what you're doing, and in consideration of others. And so sometimes that means maybe breaking a rule that you thought was correct in order to, be your best self in different situations. And so, yes, we do it for ourselves to present ourselves well. And I always say we are our own marketers, right? Whether you have a business or you don't have a business, we are our own champions, our own billboards for our personal brand. No one's out there going to promote you, right? You have to promote yourself, present yourself. And so much of that comes from how we speak about ourselves and how we navigate the world and how we show up. And so I think etiquette really gives people the tools to do that with confidence. And so I don't like to use etiquette to put people in a box. I like to pull them out of their box and help them to showcase who they are, of course, while still being respectful of others, because it's about ourselves, but it's also about others.
And when you do, whether it be for personal or corporate, when you meet with people or the feedback that you get from anybody who follows you, what is the feedback? Is it, I implemented this and I feel more confident. I feel more, because I know for me, when I, we were talking about this today at brunch, it's like, you kind of feel a little more confident when okay, this is what my drink and this is my, you know what I mean? Like even those little things, you can go into a different setting that maybe you're not familiar with. And if you know little tools, it makes you a little more relaxed, a little more confident, a little more comfortable in a certain setting, whatever that setting may be. So what's the feedback from people? Do you get that feedback from people?
Yes. I mean, people will tell me all the time that they felt more confident or that they knew things that they could do and they may not have needed to use them in a certain situation, but they knew they had them. They had the tools, which brought them ease. And when you feel that ease, you can show up more confidently. And so when you take a step back and you study these things, it gives you the space to really be yourself. When you think about life and how important connection is, if you are seated at a table trying to nail an interview, have a relationship with someone, business or personal, and you are so worried about drinking your, neighbor's water or accidentally picking up your potential future boss's fork or anything like that. You're not focused on the connection. You're not focused on being the best version of yourself. So, the dining etiquette part is probably the most rule-based thing that I teach. A lot of the other things are more about how can we think on our feet and have that social awareness and things. But people give me that feedback all the time that I was, whether it be in social situations, I've been nervous to show up to events by myself, or I didn't know how to tell people about the business that I have, or I didn't know how to answer questions about myself. And now I have the confidence to do that. And that's everything to me.
I talked about this on a previous podcast. I did like a mini episode about etiquette when I knew I was going to bring you on. So I kind of did a little teaser. And I talked about that so I previously worked very corporate. Everything was very structured. Everyone was in suits. And so I was very used to that. And then my husband's not. My husband is in fashion and entertainment, and there's artists, and everything's a little more casual and fun and different. And I would find myself when I would go to events with him, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I also don't fit in because I'm not dressing like that. I'm wearing like my blazers and my sweaters and stuff. And I was so focused on that I ended up not having a good time and not making any connections with anybody. And so I think that's when I had always been interested in etiquette. And then that social anxiety for those situations, I think was almost a catalyst for me to kind of dive in and read. I have a million etiquette books and just reading through. And then to your point, knowing what to do in certain situations and maybe breaking the rules a little bit of where this is what I know to be a rule, but I'm also trying to navigate this social situation. And then it made me more confident when I thought, okay, I don't know exactly what to talk about, or I don't know the topics, or I don't know, whatever it might be. But if I have these tools, I can just show up a little bit more comfortably and confidently, and then I'm not going through these things in my head.
Exactly. And then that gives you the space to be you.
Exactly.
And that's how you connect with people, is that authenticity and, knowing how to answer questions about yourself and knowing how to connect with people. And so that's what gives you the space when you go in with that clearer mind and more confidently, you can really show up as the best version of yourself, which is what opens, doors for everything, whether it be something as big as a career opportunity or, a new relationship or just to feel good about yourself.
Or
right.
whatever. Yeah.
We need connection. And so that's a great way to feel more comfortable in those situations.
And it's funny too. I think this is true for most people. When we're uncomfortable, we almost talk about ourselves more or word vomit about ourselves. Like, I did this thing, or I do this, or and I almost had, and I was doing that. I'm like, oh, I work in tech, and and I was just spewing out because that's what I need to talk about and retraining my brain to ask questions. But you talk about a lot about this, like in social settings when you're, how to introduce, so-and-so to so-and-so or whatever. Even those little things are so helpful in a day-to-day situation.
Yes.
That we don't think of like typical etiquette, like old school, not old soul etiquette.
People mix up my name all
the time. Yeah. I've said it a couple of times. I'm like, no, I mean old school, antiquated etiquette,
I know
not
exactly
old soul etiquette.
I know exactly what you mean.
So are there any... It's interesting today because I get asked when people are writing into me, obviously, and we'll get into those, but people are asking a lot about wedding etiquette, how to handle brides, bridesmaids, what to pay for this and what to pay for that. So I'd love your feedback on that. And you have a book specifically to all of that stuff.
Yes,
which is great. And then, of course, the big one right now is old school thought is don't talk about religion and politics. And now everyone talks about religion and politics. So we'll dive into those a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts, but are there any traditional, maybe etiquette rules that you do still pull in to modern here and there?
Sure. I mean, definitely the dining kind of that's a
big one.
A rule thing that kind of just, things evolve. Our world evolved. And so we have to evolve as well. I think about if you open an etiquette book from 1925, there's nothing on there about social media etiquette and using your phones at the table. And so we have to evolve as our world does. But there are definitely things that I still, teach, whether it be handshakes or, any of the dining etiquette rules or removing your hat or things like that. But if you think about why, it's always respect for people. And so, there are definitely things that are antiquated. When I teach in business, I take away the gender roles where like the lady would do this or the lady would do this first or you'd introduce her first because we have women in higher ranking positions than men now. And so the answer to that question is who do I want to show the most respect to in this situation?
Interesting.
So it could be a female, opening a door for a male client because they want to show their, respect to the male client. And I have total and complete respect for people who, still want to do things the older ways. And I think that there's a time and a place for that. But that's why it's so important to know your situation and know your audience. Because, when I teach people, for example, I had a client, a large financial company, and across many generations, there were, recent graduates working there and people who were 75 working there. And there were older people who said, well, I would hope that I would open a door for a lady. I would be so, insulted if she opened the door for me or whatever it was. And I said, well, that's why those etiquette rules are there as a roadmap, but you have to make the best decision in that situation.
Based off of
what you know about your audience.
Aware, know your audience.
Yes. Like read the room. Right. How can I assert the best version of myself in consideration for someone else in this exact situation?
When you define etiquette now, it almost seems like it is that a couple of things. The best version of yourself, but also being more socially aware to what's going on around you and the people that are around you.
Yes.
More so than check. Check.
Yes, because again, our world's constantly evolving. So to have rules, and this seems so contradictory to like what I talk about, right? People expect me to be super traditional and follow all the rules. And again, time and a place for the rules. I'm the biggest rule follower on the planet. But I think that it's more so about how can we think on our feet?
Yeah.
Because every situation is so unique. How can we have a hard and fast rule for every single situation? Other than the ones like always bring your host a gift. You know, that's a rule that we follow.
That's a rule.
That's a rule that we follow. Write a thank you note. Like those things are that I still teach. Those are the traditional things that I still teach. But I think about the professional and social interactions. That's where we have to be willing to be a little bit more flexible.
Mm-hmm. The thank you notes is a big one for me. The digital invites and any digital thank you card kills me. It just does. Now I'm guilty of them. Like if it's a super casual thing,
Sure.
like a little girls' brunch or something that I'm gonna have at my house, digital.
Sure.
But if it's an event, don't send me a text message. Don't send me an email, Evite. It's
Well, I always say that your invitation should match the formality of your event.
Yes.
Exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
Right. If you're having a formal cocktail charity event, that should be, a proper invitation. If you're inviting friends over on Friday afternoon for happy hour and it's Monday and you're just trying to get a bunch of people together, then a text message is great.
Yes.
But, if you're having a black tie wedding and there's an Evite, there's like a disconnect there for your audience.
I always say that the invitation is the first introduction into the event.
Yes.
So if I get an Evite, immediately I'm thinking a little more casual.
Yes.
Or if I get a text message, I'm thinking super casual.
Right.
Even for my kids' birthdays, I do an actual invitation in the mail because I just think it's their birthday. It's big. It's important.
And it is. It's
Show
the first
up.
impression of the event. I love that you do.
I always try to get, I know not everyone agrees, but even like the I'm so particular, but I'm like the thickness of the paper. Because when you hold that paper, they're going to be like, oh, this is going to be
good.
a good party. This is going to be a good one. This first birthday is going to be popping. So that's a big one. Do you have any others like that are just do it? Hostess gift. I think is very important.
Yes.
Small. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be big. Something simple. Gesture.
And on that topic, like just hosting guest etiquette in general, those are, pretty good rules to follow too about, as a host, you should be the one answering the door to greet each guest. Don't send another guest to go open the door. Things like that, like old rules, and a lot on weddings too. I mean, I have a whole book about that, but there's a lot of, and again, with weddings, so much has changed in our world that we need to also evolve with. But there's things in weddings that we have to be mindful of too. And so when I think about the rules, that's kind of what I go to.
When it comes to weddings, where do you think budget or financial stability plays into it?
About like the etiquette about it?
I guess I just been a part of so many weddings where the rules change and it's generally based on financial stability. So if the bridesmaids are maybe younger and can't host a whole thing, everyone pitch in. If the maid of honor is financially stable enough to say, hey, I'll take this off the plate. Do you know what I mean?
I see.
So it kind of is like up to the finances a little bit.
Yes.
Or if the bride is financially in a place where she said, okay, I can pay for everyone's makeup, but some brides aren't able to do that. Yes. You know what I mean? So it kind of...
Absolutely.
Where does the etiquette fall into that?
That's a great question. So, nowadays we're in a different time where it's not like the bride's parents are paying for the whole wedding. Sometimes that's still the case, but sometimes it's both parents are contributing. Sometimes it's the couple is paying for the entire wedding themselves. And so I think that the money aspect of it is less about etiquette, but what is so important is how it's communicated. So if you are someone who is expecting your bridal party to pitch into hair and makeup, bachelorette trips, showers, gifts, all of those things, you need to tell your bridal party in the very beginning what you're paying for and what they will be responsible for. And so it's less about, the etiquette of saying, oh, it's the bride's parents who pay. We don't have that anymore. It's just not something that exists as much. Again, still, some people still prefer to do things that way. But I think more of it is how you're communicating up front. This is what our budget looks like. This is the expectation. And now the ball is in your court. Is this something that you can contribute to and handle?
That's smart because I was just talking with a girlfriend yesterday who is a maid of honor and they have nobody has any idea who's hosting the bridal shower. And she said, is it me? She said, I've also read online that it should be the groom's mom or maybe a friend of the mother of the bride, or there's all these rules that they're trying to, and so now, and no one's picking it up. And so they're all in this loop of trying to figure out how to handle.
So back in the day, originally the bridesmaids would throw the shower.
Okay.
But again, a lot of times, 25-year-olds don't have the budget to throw an entire shower.
Yes.
You would not believe how the online community erupted when they found out that my mom and my mother-in-law hosted my shower. Like, people were freaking out about it. This is not the way that it's done. Your mother doesn't throw your bridal shower.
Oh, they're like trying to come for the etiquette queen and say,
like I'm breaking
like
rules.
they're catching you on something. Okay.
But that's why we have to evolve as our world does. First of all, I didn't have a bridal party, so no, I don't have a bridal party to throw my shower party. And second of all, my friends can't afford that right now at the time that we are in our lives. And my mom and mother-in-law were so happy and excited to do that for me. And, you know, in the South, it's very common for the aunts to throw the shower. That's not as it was where I grew up in the Northeast. And so it's different, you know, geographically and culturally, the way that happens. But that's where I'm thinking, like, that's where the rules kind of bend a little bit, where anyone should be able to host a shower for someone. If you want to step forward and do that for someone that you love, why does it matter if it's their mom or their mother-in-law? And so within that, you know, there's still etiquette things about, you know, invitations and being respectful to our guests and things like that. But in terms of who's hosting and where the budget falls, it's more about the communication rather than, you know, the etiquette book from 1947 told me that, told me that.
And now everyone's going to be upset
because my mom hosted my shower.
Yes. So that's great. And any other, I mean, you have a whole book on this, so check out the book. If you're going to be a bride, check out the book. But any other specific points or things that you like to pull from the book that you want to share?
I just like to tell people that, you know, there is space for you to have the wedding of your dreams and be a respectful host, right? You may not be the actual host, depending on who's paying for the wedding, but you can have the wedding of your dreams and consider your guests. There's space for both. And so I think there's a way for you to respect tradition and there's a way for you to do things correctly, but that doesn't mean you have to compromise the wedding of your dreams. And so the book really has that message, but it's called What Do I Do? Because at the end of each chapter, I answer a lot of those like sticky situation questions, like my parents are divorced. This is the first time they're going to be in the same room together. How do I handle that? You know, how do I handle guests that did an RSVP? How do I, you know, things like that. So it's really about those situational things that could potentially be tricky and especially such an emotional time of your life and your family's life. And how do you navigate that while still having your dream wedding? So that's what I try and accomplish.
To enjoy it.
Yes.
It's interesting too, because so many people now, I had a beautiful, wonderful experience, minus COVID and cancellations, all that. I literally can't complain. But we did have some people who got very upset with us. And we were just talking about this morning. And I noticed more and more people now, I think, are moving away from having a wedding purely because they don't know what to do in certain situations. I was just talking to a girl at my book club who said, we're engaged, we're going to elope because so-and-so and so-and-so don't get along. Yes. And I don't even know what to do about it. So we're going to elope.
I hear that a lot too.
Which makes me sad.
I know.
I mean, if you want to elope, go elope. But I was telling her, it was such a magical day and the pictures and all of this, it makes me sad that those two outside individuals are going to have such a big impact on your one special day. You get the one day forever, hopefully. If people had a tool book like your book and then they kind of know, then maybe they'd make a different decision.
That's what I was hoping for, you know, to find us a sweet spot between respecting certain traditions and also having the day of your dreams. I mean, I had a pretty unconventional wedding, which I think people didn't expect of me either. Again,
it was beautiful.
Thank you. But I had like a 2-day party. I had a very formal ceremony, sit down dinner, black tie, and then I had a giant cocktail party the second day, and that was like a little less traditional, but that was what worked for us. And I still respected many traditions, and you know, was a respectful host by while still having the wedding that you wanted imagined. To have. So I think that there's space for both of those things.
I was just saying at brunch, I grew up very switching gears from weddings, but just talking about. My mom was such a big stickler on no elbows on the table. It was like her biggest thing. We heard it 100 times throughout a meal. And now as an adult, I'm like, and I do this. And I know that it's bad. I know that it's in poor taste.
Well,
and I know that in my head, it's like, I hear her every single time. I still do it. And I was chatting with the girls. I'm like, but I'm so comfortable like this. And I feel engaged. And I feel, versus when I'm like this, I don't feel.
Okay, well, let me tell you how this elbow on the table works. So yes, when there's food on the table, we shouldn't have our elbows on the table. It's a sign of respect for the people we're dining with. Okay. A lot of our dining etiquette rules come from medieval times, when kind of the idea of having meals with people and sitting down for meals kind of originated. Okay. And so back then, there were these like makeshift tables of either like giant stones or wood balancing on stones. And so if you put your elbow on the table, you were going to knock over the whole table. and everybody's things.
Facts.
That's kind of where it came from. So now we do it again. A lot of our rules come from medieval times. The reason we take our hats off, the reason why we keep our knife blades facing inward, like all come from medieval times. So why? It's just a sign of respect. That's what we do. However, when we think about body language, sometimes putting your elbows on the table can help you assert yourself in a certain way in conversation. So if there's no food on the table, everything's been cleared, and you're chatting with your friends, watch what happens to my body language when I go like this.
You're engaged.
I'm engaged.
And I'm like, yes, tell me more.
Right.
Tell me everything.
Right. And so if there's no food on the table, it's actually not a terrible way to help show interest, to help you connect with someone.
Okay.
But only if the food is removed.
You hear that, Mom?
She's going to
I know.
come for me.
What about the hat thing? Actually, someone at church came up to me on Sunday and said, I saw you're going to be doing a podcast with Mariah. Can you ask her why the hat thing? Is it just for women? Is it just for men? She said, I'm a woman and I like to wear hats to meetings, and I've actually had people ask me to remove them. So what's it with the hat thing?
So the hat thing also comes from medieval times. It was all about, back when you had armor on. If you took off your armor, it was a way to literally de-arm yourself, right? To show that you came in peace, that you were looking to connect with someone. And so same reason we take off our hats as a sign of respect. For anybody, if you have a hat on that has what I call like an outdoor purpose, of an outdoor function, so it's either to protect the sun, rain, cold, whatever it is, those hats should be taken off when you go inside. Male, female, whoever.
Makes sense.
Take off.
Yeah.
For men, all hats are removed when they come inside. It's a respect thing. And then for women, if your hat is a part of your outfit or it is literally fastened to your head, you can leave it on. But if it's, something like a big sun hat or a beanie or things like that, should be removed. I'm a big hat lover. I collect vintage hats. I wear hats all the time. And so I have to be very specific of, okay, what type of hat am I wearing? Is this something that I can leave on or something that I should take off?
Got it. I like that. It's very helpful. Okay. Politics, religion, social media, I feel like it plays a big part into this. But I was also having a conversation with someone where it's interesting because it's not only, maybe this goes back to the social awareness, but I'm curious your take. I have people who I can totally talk politics with, and we don't even agree on anything, but we just know how to chat and banter and have a good chit chat about it and leave respectfully and peacefully. And then I have other individuals who we maybe agree on a ton of stuff, but for whatever reason, every time we bring it up, it just, the energy builds and then it gets this animosity. I would imagine a general good rule of thumb is just don't.
Yes.
But now it almost feels somewhat impossible with social media. And then it's just kind of ingrained in everything that we do, from school to, I don't know, you name it. It just feels very ingrained in our life, business, and, what have you. So what is your take on that? What do you think about it? I
don't like to tell people you shouldn't talk about things. There are some topics that you shouldn't talk about.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to consider your audience. Again, thinking, where am I? What am I doing? What are my goals for this? If this is someone you don't really know very well, you don't want to bring up anything that could potentially disconnect you from the person. Perhaps politics is something that you can connect with, but politics, family, money, health, religion, those are things that I try and aim to stay away from when it's with people that I don't know very well. Now, I also don't think in this climate that a political conversation goes poorly more times than it goes well. Sure. And so I think that there is if you do talk about it, I think there's a way that you can, not let it get too far through your body language and through your tone. And I think it's also about knowing that you can be in control of the conversation. So if things do go south, you can say, you know what, let's table this for now. But with that, you need to have something in your back pocket to bring up instead. To take control of the conversation. So if you want,
what's a good example?
Right. So if let's say you again, I prefer not to talk about it at all. But I don't want
someone sucks you into it.
Right. I don't want to tell people that they can or can't talk about things. So let's say you're having a conversation, it starts to go south. You might say something depending on your relationship with the person. It could be as firm as, I don't want this to go any further, or it can be as, lighthearted as, let's not waste our time talking about this anymore. I meant to ask you. That's my favorite phrase. I meant to ask you to take control back of the conversation and make it pivot it really, really quickly. But then you have to have like a back pocket topic, what I call. So you have these topics, whether it be I like to ask for people for their suggestions on things. So I say, let's table this right now. But I meant to ask you, I just finished the last show I'm watching, and I can't find another great show to watch. I know you always have the best shows. What are you watching right now?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are you reading right now? Or, planning spring break for my family. Where have you been lately? That's really great. Or have you seen, I always use like in New York, the New York Marathon is like a huge thing. It happens in November. So I'll always say, are you watching? Do you know anyone running?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll just pivot it to something that's a little bit more neutral. Again, I'm not the one that's bringing up politics because I'm old school in that way where I think it's like, plus like, it's caused everybody so much stress over the last few years. Like, can we talk about something that really helps us to connect with someone on an emotional level? And again, sometimes you can have great conversations with people that you disagree with, and it's productive and it's respectful. And if only all of them were that way. But I think it's important for people to know, how can I take control of this conversation if it goes the wrong way? Because what happens is if we start getting heated, now I'm like, I don't know what to do. So again, that goes back to,
are you going to the New York Marathon?
Right.
But like, you're not gonna,
But it goes back to that preparation. If I know I have that tool to say, let's table this for now. This is not going anywhere. We have better things to talk about. I meant to ask you.
And that's why it's smart to have it proactively.
Yes. Plan
rather than getting into
rambling.
a situation.
And that works too, even if it's not a political conversation. Like, let's say someone asks you something that's too personal or just a topic you're not comfortable talking about. That works great for that too. Like, you know what? I really don't want to get into that right now. There's just like some things going on, but I meant to ask you.
Someone wrote to me and said how to respond when people keep asking, when are you going to have kids, when are you going to have kids, and I don't want to talk about it. I feel like that could be used there as well.
There's another good one for that. Anytime someone's asking you about the next phase of your life, so even if it's not children, when are you getting engaged? Where are you going to college? Where, like, all these questions where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about that yet. My go-to response is, you still use the "but I meant to ask you" and switch the subject, but you say, you know what? I'm really enjoying this season of my life right now.
That's a good one.
To say, you know what? I'm not.
The person's like, oh, okay.
Yes, they're like, ooh, that's a good one. I don't know how to.
Okay. Tell me more about it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And if you really even want to take it a step further, you can say, I'm really enjoying this season of my life right now. And then you can, like, for me, even, I've already had people start, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? I'm recently married. And so I will say, you know what? We are just enjoying our life as newlyweds. Let me show you some pictures from the wedding. Done.
I like that. Actually, people ask me, I'm about to have baby number 3, and people are like, are you going to have more? And sometimes I'm just like, I don't know. Let me just get her out.
I'm just trying to get through the day.
Yes. Not that I'm offended by that, but that's actually just a generally great response to say.
And I think too, most people have good intentions when they ask questions like that. Some people are just nosy and obnoxious, but some people have really good intentions. Like, they're excited for my next chapter of life. And so they are taking genuine interest in that. And so I don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable asking that situation or that question. There are situations where certain questions are asked where there's no good intention at all, where it's okay for you to put that boundary up and say, I'm not talking about this. But that's why I like to make it really light, because I don't want to make that person feel weird for asking if they're really taking genuine interest. Now, with that being said, don't be the person to ask someone when they're having children. That is just another rule of thumb with etiquette. Don't ask people about.
Just don't ask.
Don't ask. Don't ask. Focus on the chapter of life that they're in now.
I struggle with, or maybe I don't know if it's a struggle or just something I know about myself. I'm very confrontational. It doesn't bother me to be confrontational, but then I sometimes find this line between, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, I could never say that. I'm like, oh, it doesn't bother me. But then I do find this weird line between etiquette and saying the right thing and being confrontational. So for example, a lot of times I have a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and then I'm pregnant. And every day I hear, oh, that's crazy. Oh, that's chaotic. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, that's just like my flat line. I'm not meaning to be.
Yes.
I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, I have it very well managed, and then people don't know what to say back. So I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't come off that way. But I do, like, even in that where people don't mean to be, they're not meaning anything negative by it, but I'm just like, no. And I don't want to lie and say, yeah.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. And you shouldn't ever say something that's not true or not be yourself. But is there a way that maybe we can be slightly more positive about it instead of saying, to make it a little bit more open-ended? So instead of saying, no, it's not, instead of even acknowledging the negative thing they said, take control and make it completely positive and say, actually, this is like my favorite season of life right now.
Yeah.
You know, when you erupt that positivity and you're positive, especially when someone's trying to be negative, we are as people so contagious to people's energy. And so when you say, no, it's not, you're still saying, I'm acknowledging that you said something negative.
Totally.
Rather than when you say, you know what, this, honestly, it's been so fun.
I love it. And it's fun,
because that's really how you feel.
It really is what it is. Yeah.
And so I think when you say it like in that way, it just evokes more positivity. And then that just enhances the conversation. You know, hopefully the person will respond well to it. But as humans, we're so sensitive to energy. So when you can be in control and say, I'm going to take this and make it positive, even though this person maybe had good intentions, but they're still having a negative connotation to things, right? You must be exhausted. You must be so busy. You must not be able to keep up with it. I'm fine. Sounds a little defensive, right? Rather than saying, you know what? I'm so happy right now. I'm so grateful for this. It's more positive.
You're right. I love that. I do also feel like this could be applied to corporate. I've been in this situation. I think anyone who's been in corporate America has been in a situation where a boss or somebody is rude or comes off in a certain way, and we get defensive and we want to jump to something, defense mode.
Yes.
Any tips for like a corporate situation, whether it be a boss or a colleague or someone, maybe those are different because one's in power and one's not, but someone that just comes at you in a certain way, because I do feel in a corporate setting too, and then you have to work with this person, and then you're kind of like in this cycle of, did you mean to be mean by that? Or were you just giving me a, constructive criticism or what? So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that I know that there's space for being polite and respectful, but not being walked all over. So I think you need to really assess the situation of, you could put up a boundary and still be polite about it. And so I think that that's important for me to say too. Like, everyone thinks about etiquette and being kind and this and that, but I don't want anyone to ever think that kindness equals weakness, right? You can be kind and respectful and still stand up for yourself and speak your truth and things like that. But I would give the same advice, and it would be to find the positive. So if someone critiques you, your question might be, well, how do you think I can do that better in the future, right? Oh, you know what? I really appreciate that feedback. I didn't consider that. What are your thoughts on how I can improve in the future? Or if someone gives you, I actually just recorded a reel this morning about backhanded compliments and how you kind of navigate that. And it's like, where can you find the positive in what they're saying? Because normally it's like, if you get, negative feedback in the workforce, it's like this and this and this, but right? So you might want to focus on, well, I appreciate that you saw that I did this really well, but in terms of this, how do you think I can improve on that? So if you can pull positive things out of any situation and control that, take back control of the energy of the conversation a little, which is difficult when it's someone that's, your senior or that is in an authoritative position. But you don't have to be stepped on. You can have a voice and be polite. I think that's important for people to know, and something that I wish I knew when I started my career in corporate America, because I let a lot of people step on me. And I would just be sweet and say yes and this and that because I really wanted to do well. But I wish I used my voice a little more.
And I'm thinking the opposite. I'm in the opposite camp where I'm like, you're not going to step on me. So what do you mean? Like, I get like that. Or I could be
just find the positive.
Gracious and positive. Yeah,
right.
I like that.
Positive.
That's very applicable, I think, in any area of life.
Absolutely. Especially because I think especially when you're speaking to someone in an authoritative position, we feel small and we feel like we can't have control of the conversation. You're in an interview. Someone asked me at a recent workshop that I was teaching for college students, and they said, they had a bad interview situation. What do I do when someone asks me this uncomfortable question or something? And I said, take back control of the even though you're not the authority in that situation, you can still have control of the conversation.
Yeah.
And know when to walk away if you're in a really bad situation.
Totally.
Right? You don't have to be stepped on.
I do think there is a piece of that too. I mean, I think going to respect and thinking of etiquette in terms of respect for yourself and for other people, I think the learning how to walk away is actually a really beneficial piece instead of staying in a situation or relationship or whatever it might be and kind of like perpetuating when you're going back to like a negative energy and then pulling back the positive.
Saying no is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to ask, I don't know what time we're at. I don't know how to tell the time. Yeah, but what did it start at?
2:40. It's military time. It's just a clock.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what does that mean? Hello, Nick Ritchie. We're in the middle. I just stopped us for a time check.
So we're at 2:45. So we'll go 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to, we'll pivot to your other books. I want to talk about your other books. Any key points that you want to talk about? Do you have 3 books?
One currently out and one coming late.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the one coming late this year. Tell me
It's
about
also
that.
wedding related. So it's kind of to go with the first one. So it's a wedding planning journal, like a fill-in that you can bring with you to your appointments and things.
Amazing.
So the first one's very etiquette based, very what do I do in these situations? And the second one's more to walk you through planning so that you can actually put forth the etiquette in the certain situations. However, I am brainstorming ideas for another book once that one's out. So I have my wheels are
Keep 'em
spinning.
going.
So my wheels are
Good.
spinning. I love writing. It's something that I enjoyed so much, and I have so many ideas. And so if only I could, get them all out.
Get 'em out. I know it.
But more to come.
Okay, good. I love it. And then I ask this to everybody. I'm kind of putting you on the spot because I
Sure.
didn't warn you, but I ask everybody a trash and a treasure of the week. So kind of like a demerit. It can be anything.
Okay.
Or a gold star. Kind of like a highlight and then a negative of the week.
Okay. So I like to start things positive. So I would say my positive of the week is being here, meeting you in person. So fun after we've, been in touch for years now, right?
Yeah.
So definitely my rose, what do we say? Like a rose and a thorn or something?
Yeah.
A gold star, whatever it is, like
Yes.
positive. And I would say my negative to this week, I really try and be a positive person. So I actually have to sit here and think for a moment of
That's
what
great.
what my negative would be. I would say maybe it's that I had a migraine yesterday.
That's a very valid one. I have the same. Sometimes people come up and they're like, okay, my trash is I did this thing and I'm really embarrassed about it. And then we get through it. It's really hard for me to find the downfall.
And that's not because my life is sunshine and rainbows and everything is perfect all the time, because
no, but your brain is
so
focused
far
on
from the truth. But I
things.
really try because actually naturally as a person, I am not the most optimistic person. And so I have to.
You're not?
No, I think I'm very critical and type A in those.
Okay.
In that sense. So I think that I've had to train my brain to really, really focus on the positive things. And I have so much excitement and so much to be grateful for. So I really try and keep my brain in that space.
Yeah. I think I hate this term, but there's a term, toxic positivity, which to me, I'm just no, I just don't focus on negative things.
I don't like that term either.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I think that I don't like it. I just don't like it.
I will say I was thinking about this. I do have my trash for the week.
Okay.
You know, it's something that I would like. This has nothing to do with our conversation.
Okay.
It just came to my mind because I've been seeing it more and more. Is I don't like when we've been hearing this for years because Cher said it back in however long ago, but it keeps repeating. Don't marry a rich man, be a rich man. And you know what I don't like about that? I think we can be successful women without putting a negative on anybody else, other men or men, other women. You can be a rich woman in whatever capacity without, putting a damper on anybody else.
So true.
And that keeps cycling. I don't know why it keeps popping up on my popular page. I'm like, just stop. It came up the other day and I saw it again. It was like, my favorite quote is, don't marry a rich man, be a rich man. I'm like, you can do both, or you can just be in your own, you know what I mean? We don't need to bring other people down to be the best version of ourselves.
So we're trashing that. That's your trash.
That's my trash. We're trashing that. Let's stop saying that. My positive is this week.
You have so many fun things going on.
And I will say it's the first time that I've left my children. And I didn't think I was going to do well, and I'm doing great. Not that I don't miss them tremendously.
No, but you're shining your light in a different way.
I'm so happy. I've been FaceTiming them every day, which I was hesitant. A lot of moms
Do they even miss you? Are they having fun without you?
They're having a blast. My little one was looking at me today and he was waving at me.
Trying to conceptualize what's happening.
Yeah. But they're having a great time. I'm having a great time. And I think I was more worried about it in my own head and more worried about them than I needed to.
Isn't that a good life lesson
about it.
though?
Yeah.
About how we just worry about things so much more.
The worry was worse than actually
100%.
being here.
Story of
And
my
they're-
life.
Yeah, and they're doing great. And a lot of moms wrote to me, were like, whatever you do, don't FaceTime them. Just don't FaceTime them. It doesn't go well. They called me first and it was great. And they were like, look what we're doing. And we're building forts and we're doing all these things.
So cute.
I'm like, this is great. And I feel good. So I'm
Filling your cup in a
really-
different way. I love
Totally. And it's going to be a very long time before I get to hang out with friends and do any of this stuff because she's going to be here and then I'm really not going to leave.
that. Yes.
So I get to meet you. We have the event tomorrow.
So exciting.
So it's great. Yeah.
I'm
so
happy for you.
those are my gold stars.
Yay.
My treasures of the week.
I love it.
Yes. Okay. Any closing remarks? If you could leave the listeners with one thing, one takeaway, what would it be?
My message is always to have the confidence to shine your light and to, give etiquette another chance of the preconceived notions that you may have had and to really think about it as a way to give you the tools to really shine who you are in your authentic story.
I love it. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. This is
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.